Alright everyone, time for Smiles Rants number 2. I'm Smiles and this is the Rant. We're going to be going over revised changes this time. Just a couple days after proposed. Nice to see those before the age ends and so quickly. So I'm also going to have proposed up here on the next tab so I can compare. This is going to be mostly a comparison from revised from proposed and not just revised on its own compared to last age. So you're going to have to see the last video if you want to see my comparisons from last age. First off, we've already got a big change. Base attack time reduced to 14 hours. And then if you see down here, the war attack time will be reduced to 20%. So in war, your base attack time is going to be 11.2. I did the math beforehand. So that's about 5% faster than regular times. You're still going to have that 2-a-day cycle if you don't run any speed mods. I think it's a good change. Being at 14 out of war makes it easier to run 2 waves a day out of war. At 16 base time, it's really hard to have a schedule that doesn't just change dramatically. At 14 hours, you can run an Avian attack, a few racks, a Godspeed, and basically get that 12-hour range. And I think that's good for everyone, especially if they're encouraging or at least expecting more out-of-war play. In general, if everyone has an attack speed buff, that's a buff to all core as well. So just consider all cores a little bit stronger next age compared to your TM counterparts. Nothing else there. I believe there's no changes to the forced ceasefires. All this stuff is the same as proposed. All of this is the same as proposed except for that war phase in. Rituals. So I believe the only change from proposed is they nerfed Havoc a little more, from 20 to 15%. Not entirely sure what the idea there is. I don't think people thought Havoc was overpowered this last age. I don't think people thought Havoc was overpowered and proposed. So that's just a little something being tossed in there. So first race, we have Avian. So right away we can see different than proposed. We have spells back to being race specific as well. So Illuminate Shadows and Fanat. Fanat's just a little bit of free offense. Illuminate Shadows is, in some ways, it's as good as Clear Sight, other ways not as much. The actual effect, if you get, Night Strike 50 times, is about the same, but causing more fails is worse for your opponent. But Illuminate Shadows tends to go under the radar more often than Clear Sight, so it's less likely to be vortexed off. Penalty, they went from having bad horses to no stables whatsoever. Effectively no change at all. What that really does is, in the very niche case of if you wanted to be an Avian rogue that stole horses, I guess. And it looks like they changed the O spec from 11 to 10 and the D spec from 10 to 11. It's hard to say which is stronger. I think I prefer the D spec buff overall. I think it gives Avians a nice way to turtle a little bit harder. If you're not getting chained or hit as much, you can make more use out of that birth rate. It's also going to open up some hybrid play. I think an Avian Mystic is a decent hybrid next age. And then a big buff here is their Elite used to be a 13, now a 15. That's a significant offense boost. That means Avians are going to be on par with any non-hard attacker. So you're like your Dark Elves, your Dwarves, those sort of attackers, your Avian is going to be stronger than them at attacking, and only a little bit behind your sort of undeads, your orcs. And I believe they had a 1200 Elite before, now 1300, not a big change. Overall, I'd say that's a big buff to Avian from your proposed. Anytime you have an Avian that can put out good offense numbers, it quickly becomes your ideal pick for core. And let's see if I missed anything. Oh yes, it looks like all soldiers in Revised have gone up to a 3-3. Doesn't change much, but you can see soldiers get some play with horses with dragon slaying with a little bit of defense here and there. Now a mounted soldier is half as good as an O-spec, and that's not negligible. As long as we don't see any Emeriti soldier balls, I'm pretty happy. And yeah, it looks like just that elite change. Oh, and all prisoners and mercs were upped to 8/8. Pretty minor change. I don't think that affects anyone much. It's just a very hidden, very small bonus for everyone. So Dark Elf, I said in my last video, Dark Elf needed a lot of love, and we'll see if they got it. Same penalty as before, same spell damage as before. They used to have cheaper thieves, now they have higher TPA. Pretty minor bonus. That basically turns your 3 TPA into a 3.5, or your 6 TPA into a 7. I don't expect to see a lot of 6 TPA Dark Elves out there, so you get half a TPA in just your standard sort of build. If you're running like a 5-6 TPA TM, then you're getting a sizable bonus there, but nothing that substantial. Now they have spells. Is this a great spell list? Well, it's 3 duration spells, which you don't really want to be casting if you're focusing on spell damage mods. Blizzard's nice to have if it's the only access to it. That gives some help. Pitfalls. I believe the only other Pitfalls was on Mystic before. I now believe it's on Tactician. So there's more than one way to get that. It means you're not necessarily going to see Dark Elf. Gluttony, it has a place. I don't see it used often. The big one here is Fool's Gold. If Fool's Gold isn't available to Heretics but is Dark Elf only, you might want to have a Dark Elf or two. Fool's Gold, in the right situation, can be one of the best spells in the game and can really change the tide of wars, of hostiles, of how much that cow wants to deal with losing all their gold. So, any difference? Looks like their elite got 1 more offense. Yes, they have 1 more offense, and they lost a lot of defense. I think that's okay. Offense helps more than the defense. I don't think people were going to be turtling with elite defense before, so actually having a lower net worth on the elite might be a help. But I still don't think Dark Elf is where it needs to be a major pick. You might see 1 or 2 here and there just for the spells. Elf. I believe they lost some bonuses on Elf. Yes, they lost the free runes. Not a huge deal, but it's not negligible. It's about a 5% BE buff in and out of war. So, take that as it is. Access to Chastity and Nightmares. That's a pretty big bonus. Especially Nightmares. Anytime you have racial access to Nightmares, you can see Mystics casting Nightmare, and that's scary because your Mystic has a really easy path to high WPA, especially when you've got your innate elf bonuses, and then you also have +1 mana on Mystic. So that can lead to situations where it's just bordering overpowered, especially because Nightmare gets more honor than any other spell that you can spam. So I would be scared for what you can do with elves and mystics and how you might want to set up nightmare comps. An elf mystic that's doing your nightmares is going to be a lot easier to do than having to run a heretic, because you just get so much more wizards. It looks like the military is unchanged. You're still going to have difficulty getting pure defense, and you don't really have a good attacking thing. You're just O-spec attacker. There's no converts. So, Chastity, don't think that makes up a huge deal, having access to Chastity, because if you were going Mystic anyways, you would have had Chastity. And if you're not going Mystic, Chastity's not the best spell in the world, because you really need to have max guilds for that to be worth it. But maybe you have an elf heretic now that has access to Chastity, and that's a little bonus. Sab damage as before. I don't like having it, so that sucks. Only other things I might see with Elf is maybe something like an Elf War Hero. If you push your wizards really hard, having that Nightmare access is a really good path to having a lot of honor. War Hero gets those honor bonuses. If you're doing a lot of Nightmare, you can use those War Hero generals as well. So perhaps that's a niche pick. I was having a talk with this earlier today. Combine that maybe with some hybrid or pure rogues. If you need the help, they can do a little assassinate wizards to make those nightmares go easier. And if you have the honor steamroll on a war hero, you will be the best in the game. So, overall I like it. I'm just a little bit worried what happens with nightmares and mystics. So we have Dwarf. It looks like there's some changes there. They lost a bit of BE. They have minus construction time now. Before it was 25%. So it looks like, 50% versus 25%. I don't think that changes a lot. Especially with no access to accelerated construction. Your armies, when you're waving, the construction time at minus 25% enough isn't already going to sync up your armies and builds. So I don't think 50% really adds much more than 25%, especially when it's still costing you everything and you can't excel. 5% BE, not a huge change either direction, but a little nerf there. Looks like their elite is effectively the same. They got one more defense. Doesn't change much, but they do have access to Mist. Anytime you have BE bonuses and Mist, I want to facepalm because I hate running into those guard station, watchtower, BE builds. It's not creative. It's just a slog. You're just guaranteeing that your dwarves are going to grow, and then everyone's going to have to complain and deal with them, and it's like, oh, yay, I hope we have Nightmare or Amnesia. Because a Turtle Dwarf with high BE is it's slow to take down. It's not a huge threat, but eventually you have to deal with it, and if you don't, it's just a pain. So, I don't think it's unbalanced. I just personally don't like playing against them. Is what it is. Overall, not a lot changed from proposed. Fairy. It looks like nothing has changed about Fairy, except now they have Mystic Aura. So in a way, that's a nerf to Fairy, since everyone else got better spells. Is that a big deal? Not really. Flavor-wise, I don't really like it, because, Fairy only got one spell. And, Fairy should have lots of spells. That's how I always thought of my fairies in Utopia. So, Fairy's still strong. If you can get that pure elite, you're going to be really happy. The minus thief losses are super useful as any sort of TM. And your arcane science is going to scale pretty well. Pretty good, pretty good. Humans. Looks like humans got toned down quite a bit. I think that's fair. I think myself and many others thought humans were looking like the strongest core. So their elite took a 1 hit on offense, and they lost 5% science efficiency. Neither of those on their own are a huge nerf, but it's a little something. Just a little something to keep them constrained. Now they've got the same offense as an Avian, so maybe you still want to pick Avian. 10% science efficiency isn't a lot. It's a sizable bonus. It's not negligible, but it's really not enough, in my opinion, to sway anything heavily or make it like a huge powerhouse. The dragon slaying buff. Maybe you make a human dragon killer. It's pretty small. Having a +1 to either spec would be probably stronger than the slaying bonus. So I think that's a little bit odd. It's just like somebody thought of it and they're like, well, I want it somewhere in changes, so let's put it here. And access to Ghost Workers. Ghost Workers is an okay spell. It gives you some BE, maybe 5% is how I think of it. Everyone likes 5% BE. It's not terrible. Kinda syncs with your general high science efficiency builds. Usually got more economy to it, so you can make that work. You know, maybe you have a human war hero with a lot of valor science, and you can throw 6 or 7 attack soldiers into a dragon. It doesn't sound terrible to me. You know, I might literally just run one human war hero for slaying with soldiers. Why not? Orc. What did we have on Orc before? They had a training time buff, which I said wasn't a huge deal. Now they have their gains back, and they have Bloodlust. And they doubled their elite defense. I'm not sure if this makes Orc really good or just okay. Anytime there's Bloodlust on any race, I think to myself, well, this might be the strongest thing, and I have to think for a while. Bloodlust, you're getting kills and offense. You've got the highest offense elite. You've got a buff to your offense, you've got a kill bonus, you've got a stacking kill bonus. So when you have 30% more offense than someone else, that also means you're doing 30% more kills, effectively. So if you have 30% more offense and you're doing 30% more kills, suddenly you're doing 70% more kills. That's pretty scary. Now, you have to contend with easy bushes, but if you're not going to be pure elite anyways, because it's going to be hard in general for pure elite, they've got an expensive elite, you know, if you're bushing both specs and elites, the elite defense doesn't matter as much in that case. And Bloodlust buffs your O-spec offense, and it's really the only O-spec buff in these changes. So, no honor is tough. If you assume that you're a Baron, you're basically losing 10% offense, 10% TPA, 10% WPA, 10% income. That's sort of how I think of attacker honor, is just, it's a bunch of 10%s. You know, really it's only 6% offense and 3% pop, and I just merge those into 10% offense because it's easier to think about. So, you know, if you lose 10% offense and you get Bloodlust, it's kind of a wash. Maybe if you run Orc Paladins, you can lean into that kill ratio. I think that's not a bad idea. Because if you're killing 150% of their units and you're losing 70% of their units, that just seems strong. You know, they're going to be forced to overpop you if they want to deal with your military efficiently. And if they're consistently chaining you, you probably won't even be Baron, you're going to be Lord. And if you're Lord, the honor's really not a big deal. And if you're a Paladin, you've got innate bonuses to, you know, Fireball and Night Strike mitigation. And even if you're a Paladin, you're probably going to have Wrathful on, and that's going to stack with Bloodlust and your casualties. You know, I think Orc Paladin is a bit of a sleeper pick. I know Saps ran a bunch of Orc Clerics a few ages ago, and that actually turned out really well. So, yeah, I kind of like that. Originally, I was thinking about Orc Warriors, because just hitting stuff hard is good. You run a few Orc Warriors, you know they're always going to be getting chained first, so you can really tailor to them to being anti-chain, and that allows the rest of your setup some breathing room, because you know they're not on the chopping block right away. That sort of pick, that sort of Orc Warrior pick always goes well with hybrids, because the biggest issue with hybrids is usually seeing them chained in the first waves. So you want a baiting pick like Orc that can buy them that time. So, I think Orc got a really big buff here. Gains and Bloodlust are two huge things to have. And so Orc is definitely a contended pick again. So they've fixed that from Revised. Also, okay, there's no Dryad. I just realized that. So no more Dryad. Okay, so now Orc is really your only super high offense pick left. Yeah. Okay. Undead. Undead. So the casualties are the same. No more farms needed, so that's a good 5% land or so. Now they have Reflect Magic. That's a really nice benefit. Oh, that got changed to offensive military casualties only. I don't like that at all. Like that's such a really mediocre bonus. And if it's 20% of everything, that's fine. When it's only offensive, it's... who cares? But I guess that makes your Animate Dead more flavorful. I've always thought it was funny when there's Animate Dead on a race that has a bunch of minus losses, or a personality with minus losses, because you're like, well, if things aren't dying, what are you really animating? But Reflect Magic's a really good spell, and the higher WPA you have and the more undead you have, the more that Reflect Magic starts to shine. But they lost their converts. So one of my favorite things about undead before was when they have no elite training and they do have converts, you can really push their WPA and their science in End of War Ceasefire. Now they don't have any of that. No sabotage operations available. You know, that's... sometimes that's really annoying and sometimes it's super fine. Before, what was their nerf? Just the no training, right? Oof. Those proposed, they really needed to like bold the things and separate them better. Super hard to read. Yeah. So they're back to a 10D spec. You can train their elites now, which are quite strong. But no, is it as strong as an orc? I don't think so. It fills that same goal. You've got a big elite. You want to hit stuff. Overall, I'm not a huge fan of this undead. The only thing I really make out of it is how can I use Reflect Magic well. You know, maybe you can run a bunch of undead rogues. That's always a fun game to play. But just they're going to struggle to get the elites. That's the same problem that Orc has, really, is that it's going to be hard to get a lot of elites. They're expensive, and without the elite, there's really no good benefit to them. At least Orc has kills and gains. Undead, all they have is a really minor sustainability buff and a really minor economic buff. So, I'm not a huge fan of these undeads. Only thing they got going for them is Reflect Magic, and in Proposed you could get Reflect Magic on Warrior, and just running a big Warrior core seemed a lot better than running an Undead core like this. So, yeah, I think we're going to have to see Plague come back to Undead if these are the sort of changes we're going to have, or we're going to have to revert back into them having converts or something similar. And Gnomes look like they are unchanged. Now they have Town Watch. I don't think it matters very much. I mean, it helps if you're overpopping with peasants, of course, but it's not make or break for Gnome. It might matter if you're a TM, it might matter if you're an attacker, but I think Gnome remains your best. I'm going to build D-specs and be an unbreakable TM style. So just do that if that's your plan. Nothing wrong with that, right? Training thieves with spec credits is going to be really useful this age. It's going to save you a lot of money if you win wars. So, Personalities. I think the big changes in Revised are going to come from your personalities. We're going to see building benefits and science benefits on almost every personality. So that's what we see here. Artisan lost 50% build time and build cost. So that's a really big nerf. And then they got bank effectiveness. That saves you, what, 5% land in End of War Ceasefire? Which I don't think matters. I think Artisan's benefit was already that it had a really good End of War Ceasefire. I don't think needing a few less banks changes that much at all. And now they've got this science effectiveness to tools. So I did a little bit of number running beforehand, and a 25% effectiveness to tools is going to give you about plus 8% BE when you are at 1 million books. So for all of the science bonuses and personalities, I just ran what they'd be at 1 million books, and I wrote those down. So 8% more building efficiency. You can definitely push tools more than 1 million. It's one of those science categories that you can push really hard and it doesn't diminish that badly. So, you can be an artisan. You're saving some land on your capacity production bonus. You're saving BE on ghost workers. You've got BE from tools. You can stack all those things together and then combine that with the fact that you're very certain to have pure elite. I think Artisan is very close to being your best pick, except for the fact that nobody's going to war you. And if no one's going to war you, at least the way I play, what's the point? But if you're more concerned with being as strong as you can, I think Artisan is potentially just the strongest, or at least it'll get set up the fastest, and no one's going to be able to touch you, and you use that to steamroll. So, yeah, that's Artisan. Paladin. Paladin's getting some free watchtowers, they're getting some heroism, and their military casualties used to be minus 20%, now it's at 30%. In my last video, I said that's sort of my cutoff. 20% I don't care about. Once you're at 30%, I start thinking, this is nice. So I think I would take this Paladin and I would have no trouble making it a major part of my core. I think with these bonuses, it's not just your token support caster. I think it's actually viable as a core pick straight up. I think Avian Paladin's looking fine. I think Orc Paladin's looking fine. Watchtowers on core are really nice. Only problem here is your heroism science is not super useful. I ran the numbers on that. I think you're getting about 6% faster draft and cheaper draft at 1 million books, which comes around 30%. So, that saves you money in End of War Ceasefire. It lets you draft in war a little bit. Maybe that helps on Avian if you've got peasants and birth rate and stacking and all that. But when you look at the other science bonuses that the other core are getting, 25% heroism isn't doing a whole lot to make you stronger. It's more of a small attrition bonus. So I think that's the one thing that's really stopping it from being like, hey, this will be my core. But yeah, I think this pairs up really well with almost any attacker, and I'm pretty happy with what I see there. Mystic. It looks like they took my suggestion and nerfed Mystic pretty hard. So if we go here, Mystic has lost several spells and the duration bonus. So the biggest nerf to Mystic here is they lost that 25% spell duration. That comes into play really hard, especially on Chastity, but saves you mana on self spells. When you save mana on self spells, you have more offensive spells to cast. They get some free towers now, which is nice. They lost Blizzard and they lost Chastity. So now Elf is your only Chast caster. And DE is your only Blizzard caster. And I can just see down here that DE is now also your only Fool Gold caster. So Mystic's still very strong. You got 4 mana, and you got a lot of guilds, and you've got free runes, and you've got, meteor showers. So you're still going to have Mystics. You're probably going to have the exact amount of Mystics every age that there is every age, with no change, no matter how strong or weak it is, because everyone has in their head, we need this many Mystics, and that's just that. So I'm glad that it doesn't feel quite as overpowered anymore. I'm just thinking about +1 mana nightmares mostly on Elf. Are we doing it? Alright. So at some point I paused my recording, and then I finished the recording, and then it turns out I had paused right here around the end of me talking about Mystic. So I'm just going to assume I'm done with talking about Mystic and keep going. Overall, yeah, Mystic, it's good at being a Mystic. I'm not thrilled with it. Worried about Nightmares. Might be a good hybrid. Yada, yada, yada. So we've got Heretic, is where I think things start getting fun again. So Heretic lost Mind Focus and gained Guild Effectiveness. And it lost Guile and gained Stealth. And I think those two things are effectually the same. You're going to have more guilds in war now as a Heretic, so that's a buff. I think you're going to have about the same wizards overall. And +1 stealth means, 30% more stealth damage, which is about as good as Guile, which was a combination of stealth and magic damage. But the big nerf here to Heretic is they lost the 50% runes. And that's a big deal. Like, that really, really changes the way you're playing a Heretic. So you're not just spamming as a Heretic anymore. And they really made it more thief focused. So the minus losses, the plus stealth, I think that makes Heretic a lot stronger on like a gnome or an elf. But it makes it a little bit weaker as a fairy. I think, that oppressive 50% rune reduction style had a lot of potential this age, because I think Nightmares is going to be very strong with lower offenses, higher defenses on core, and lower defenses on TM. You still have Mage's Fury, which makes you better than any Mystics at just modified wizards. Heretic did lose Fool's Gold, so now you do need that Dark Elf for Fool's Gold. Yeah. You're going to gain a bit more honor, I guess, as a Heretic with more stealth. It's interesting. I don't think it's weaker, and I don't think it's stronger, I just think it's different. And, it really leans into stealth play. So, let's see, what else did Heretic lose? Talked about that. So yeah, it's really just the Fool's Gold it lost. You know what, I think a Heretic's going to be really happy this age. It's got extra stealth, it's going to have minus losses. Yeah, well, used to be Heretic was like a super Nightmare caster, but now Elf has Nightmare, so you're going to see Elf Mystics be the scary, oppressive Nightmare caster, and Heretics are just going to be in this weird spot where Nightmare's open to them, but I think they're just going to do whatever spells make sense. They're not going to be your prime Nightmare Avenue anymore, and they're just going to be night striking the balls off people and doing riots. Interesting change. Interesting change. Rogues. So, rogues lost a bit of TD effect, which seems small, but I think it's actually going to be about a 5% difference in war, and rogues are pretty hard up for land, so I think that's a decent nerf, and they lost that free TPA they used to have, which was 15%, which when it stacked with Invis came to be about 20%. So rogue no longer has, 140% free TPA built in, but they gained +2 stealth instead of +1, and that's a 25% bonus to rogue overall. So I think rogue, it's just going to be a little bit harder for them to pierce like really strong provinces if they want to break down a hard mystic or a hard heretic or even another rogue. They don't have quite that power output anymore in pure TPA, but once the gates are open, the ops are going to flood in with that extra stealth. So I think overall that's a buff for rogue. And I think, you can even see some pretty good hybrid rogues with 2 stealth. I think that's a good way to make use of that undead reflect magic, maybe. You run a bunch of undead rogues. You could have a fun time doing that for sure. Invis is just great, especially as a core. But yeah, rogues look really happy this age, for sure. Overall, I think that's a pretty decent buff to rogue. So last video I harped on the 3 TM personalities quite a bit. I think Mystic got that nerf I wanted to see. I think Heretic changed for the better, but didn't really get nerfed so much. It's just different. And then I actually see a buff on rogue, which I'm not sure I'm okay with. But seeing all the other personality buffs, it might be okay. Sage got 15% libraries, which is not enough to matter. I didn't think they were particularly strong before. Now I think they're definitely the worst personality. Good luck if you like science. And Tactician. So now we've got our 3 main core personalities. Tactician used to have 1 general, now it's got 15% attack time. I think except for specific circumstances, that's just a pure buff to Tactician. 25% guard stations, 30% siege, that comes out to about 5% more gains at 1,000,000 books. So you're attacking faster, you're tanking better, and you're taking more. That feels really good for a core. That sort of hits all the avenues. You've got a way to retain your thieves, you've got thievery defense, and you're going to be needed for pitfalls. You're either looking at tacticians or dark elves for pitfalls. I think most people are going to opt for the tactician. And Wrathful Smite's just nice. I don't think it adds too much. I think it's just nice. I think this age the credit bonus is a lot more valuable than last age. When you don't have pure elites on everyone, I think credits are more valuable. You're going to have more soldiers to draft and more peasants on average with weaker TMs. So I think this credit bonus actually gets more use this age than any recent age. But I don't have a clear personality coming out of the Tactician. Like, I don't think of a lot of things I really like about it. Or, like, picks I want with it. Maybe Undead, because you've got that clear sight plus reflect magic. It's just nice. It hits all the points, but it doesn't really, like, sing in my ears as something I really, really like. It's strong. I don't know if it's got the personality I want, though. So, certainly a good pick. You've got the War Hero, +1 General, 100% effects from Honor. As I've said before, if I have an attacker, I assume they're about Baron, and Baron Honor gives you like 10% income, 10% offense, 10% TPA, 10% WPA. So when you look at a core, you're thinking about offense. So, is it as strong as warrior? It's not as strong as warrior for offense, but you've got those training grounds. That's going to be about 5% free land in your war build. You're going to push that offense more. And then science effectiveness to valor. At 1,000,000 books, that's going to be 19% more slaying, or 19% faster training. And with HI, that's going to change your average train time from like 18 ticks for most regular provinces down to like 6 or 7 ticks for your war heroes. And that effectively gives you 10 more ticks of pure income and end of war ceasefire, which is it's a big bonus. I think it's going to be bigger than people realize. A funny thing I think about with War Hero is that having a bonus to slaying dragons and wanting honor conflict with each other quite a bit. Because if you're going to be the guy suiciding a dragon, you're probably not keeping your honor. So I like that it has two different sort of paths there. You could certainly run 3 or 4 war heroes, probably avians or humans that are just meant to be your dragon slayers. Say they run 10 D-specs per acre each. If all 4 of those provinces toss in half their defense, they're going to slay most dragons. I did the math. If you're average size in your kingdom, and you've got 1,000,000 books valor, and you've got human or avian D-specs, it's going to take you about 12 D-specs per acre to slay a topaz or a sapphire. And if you've got 3 or 4 war heroes doing that, that seems really reasonable to me. I think war hero is going to benefit a lot from nightmare compositions. You've got the general, and you've got the honor effects. And if you steamroll with a Nightmare Kingdom, that's a really good way for your core to gain a lot of honor. I had a nice talk about Elf War Hero with a buddy, and you can do, if you push your WPA hard and you Nightmare people with your Elf War Hero, I think you could get a lot of honor out of that, and I think that could go a long way. So I think that's an interesting setup, is you combine Elf War Heroes and undead rogues as your core. You do a little bit of assassinate wizards. You play kind of tanky, you nightmare, you chain. Then you've got a whole core that either has high WPA or reflect magic. I think that's a pretty fun idea. And if you can average that Baron or higher honor, you're pretty happy with your War Hero bonus. If you're above Baron, if you're a V count or higher, you're suddenly very, very strong. If you hit Count or Marquis, you're very scary. At that point, you want to be a turtle and you want to push WPA because people are going to be gunning for that honor hard. So overall, I think War Hero is a really good pick. I like the flavor of it. I have a lot of ideas about it, which makes me happy. Like, Tactician seems strong, but I don't think of things I want to do with it as much as War Hero. War Hero, I'm like, oh, I could do this, and so that makes me happy. So I like the changes here for War Hero a lot. Warrior, this is just all your offense. It doesn't have Reflect Magic anymore, which the old Warrior did, which is sad, but you're looking at a lot of offense increases. 25% barracks, I think that's probably the least useful of any of the building buffs we've seen, because I don't think you very often run more than 10%-ish barracks. If you're pushing that 20% barracks range, then sure, you're getting 5% more. But when you're already at 20% of a building, the extra doesn't help as much. So, it's worth like 2 or 3% barracks. Great. If you have them at all. But if you look at your 1,000,000 books of tactics, that's going to be about 6% more offense, combining with your 12.5% OME, combining with fanaticism. I'm no math scholar, but if you combine, I'm not going to do math, But, you know, you're looking at 25% more offense than other people or so. And, you know, maybe not 25% more than a war hero, but certainly this is your big boy offense pick. It's all that everything's geared towards. And then aggression, I'm not sure if that's +1 or +2 for the soldier, but warrior aggression soldiers are going to be looking at, you know, perhaps twice as strong as anyone else's. You're going to see, you know, almost O-spec levels of horses. You know, you can do good stuff with that. So overall, I think the revised are a little bit janky. I see a lot of things that I like a lot. I like that Orc got balanced a little bit better, and Human got balanced a little bit better, and Avian. I still think Dark Elf needs some work. You know, it's your only path for Fool's Gold and Blizzard, and that's, you know, I don't like the idea that you're picking a personality or a race just because you need that one spell on one province. So, you know, I don't think it's where it needs to be yet. I think a good way to fix Dark Elf might just be to give it a really cheap elite. Make it 1,000, make it 800, make it not stronger because it's got better numbers, but it's easier to get there is a fun way to balance things. I like personalities for the most part. I like that Paladin feels closer to the other core picks and not just a niche support caster, that same sort of thing. I like the feeling of Artisan with the tools. I'm still really on the fence about that. I like the change to Heretic. I think minus 50% rune cost is just, it makes certain strategies too strong, especially when it comes to the growth side of things. You know, they're not picked all the time, but when they are, everyone just rolls their eyes and say, okay, here, have your thing. I think there's maybe just a bit too much power still here in the Rogue and Heretic with all that stealth. I think if you've got TMs that can do that much Night Strike, you're just going to blow through enemy core, and you're just going to have big walls of TMs or big walls of TMs. And it's not ideal. I like that Mystic doesn't feel too strong to me right now, because when Mystic feels too strong, it's another one of those things where it's like, well, I might as well just put Mystic on half my attackers. So no, I really like the direction of the revised. I think it needs a bit more tweaks in terms of balance. There's certainly a lot more typos in this one as well, so I don't know why it was rushed out if it was. But yeah, revised. If there's anything people want me to talk about specifically, you know, drop me a line, leave a comment. I might do a video on just sort of meme picks that I think are quite viable, like 25 Gnomes or 25 Avians. How might I run that? Or how would I run an Elf War Hero Undead Rogue Kingdom? 'Cause, you know, I just think that's kind of cool, and you know, I think you'll think that's cool too. Once we have finals, I will do another video like this, and I also hope to make 4 or 5 or 6 even setups that I think are competitively viable, do a video on how I'd run them, and just sort of release those to community as well, because anytime you've got changes, I think people, you know, it's just not enough time for people. A lot of people need to play them before they understand them, and by the time you're playing, it's too late. And I think one thing holding some of the community back is just they don't have those good strategies at the start of Age, and then they're stuck with their picks. So, yeah, hope to do something like that. Thanks for watching. If you watched, I'm proud of you. That's Smiles Rants number 2.